The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys, they let us think that we're big boys, they let us make the louder noise, but we ain't rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
Alright, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
Alright.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Nephew. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat above all. We're with you. It's time to take off. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott. It's great to have you along for the ride as we kick off this new week on Monday, August 28th, Tuesday, August 29th. If you're on the East Coast or across the pond, hope you had a great day and night. We are live right here in the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia. We are here 7 days a week for your listening entertainment. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We're also live at spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music, get your horns up for Mr. Rod Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official sound of Spaced Out Radio. You can also follow me all over social media. How about on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio? Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We're also on iHeartRadio in the United States and on TalkStream Live. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, if you want to take part in this show, you have to do me a favor. You have to sign into one of the chat rooms. Either go on Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, what you do, just use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. I will get to your questions and comments in there as well. Now, if you head to our website for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, pick up a t-shirt, poster, stickers, read The Encounter online, our news section put together by Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. Check out my latest blog there as well. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV also have some great videos online as well. Tonight on Spaced Out Radio is the final Monday of the month, which means it's time for Butch Witkowski's Strange Days. Today, Butch has brought along a longtime friend and field investigator, Lon Strickler, as well. Tonight, we're going to get into this never-ending story coming out of Chicago about the Phantoms, or the Illinois version of the Mothman. It's the strange creature that continues to arouse our curiosity wherever we're going with this. The experiences that people are having are second to none, especially when it happens multiple times in the same area. So we're going to get into everything strange tonight, from Mothman to Bigfoot and whatever else comes up. It's a cryptid smorgasbord with Butch and Lon tonight, so let's fire things up, get right to it. Butch Witkowski, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fine, sir. How are you?
I am excellent, excellent. Lon Strickler, always good to have you back on Spaced Out Radio. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Not a problem. You know, I got to be honest with you guys. I am still pretty much, to be fully honest, I'm still, cleaning myself from yesterday. My friend Corey, her and I went to a Bigfoot area where we found a print last year. And I've posted those prints a lot of times on social media. And where we found the second print, which was about 150 feet into the forest, we put a rock structure. I haven't been able to get to that rock structure, and last week we actually went in there to see if that area was harmed by the forest fires, and thankfully it wasn't. So Corey and I pull up to this spot, and we walk in, enter the bushes, and me being kind of the spiritual guy that I am, kind of announce that we're unarmed, that we're there to come in peace. We ask that all wild animals kind of push their way back, not to bug us, and any Sasquatch, we're not there to bug you. We're just there to check the area to see if the rocks were still piled up. So we walk in about another 40 feet after old Davey does his thing, and then we stop and kind of looking around, trying to get a feel for the area, because it's really weird. The forests here, guys, are so thick that everything starts to look alike, even though you're only, at this point, 100 feet in, if that. So, took another 3-4 steps, and this is where we heard this. And it lasted for about 5 seconds. I have never heard anything that deep in my life. Never heard anything that deep in my life. And I looked at Corey, I said, "Thank you, we're out of here." and we quickly sauntered back to the logging road where my truck was parked and, pretty much got the hell out of Dodge. Now, the funny part about it is we didn't see it. But talking to a guy named Mark, who is a good friend of mine, who is an outdoorsman in the area, he's like, yes. He's like, you probably caught a bear sleeping, taking a nap in the heat. And therefore, he just wasn't having the energy to come get you. So I'm still literally, I've had about 5 showers now because that's a little too close and personal. He was about 50 feet from us. And this is how thick the forest is, guys, 50 feet. You should be able to see what's ahead of you at 50 feet. Could not see him. Could not see him whatsoever. So how was your weekend, Butch?
Well, I've been there exactly. Our forests are pretty much the same where, you can have somebody walk in 10 paces. You don't see them anymore. But I do want to respond before we start here to one of your listeners, a guy by the name of Don. After last week's show, a few days after the show, he sent me an email. And he wanted to know why there were no fantastic sightings or reports of things going on in his neck of the woods, which is the Indiana area, Missouri. And I said to him, let me get some information to you, and I'm going to share the information with you guys. In Missouri, which has an enormous amount of reports and is often overlooked by ufologists. You don't hear a lot about Missouri. But to date, Missouri's had 2,160 reports since 1941. That's a lot, considering Pennsylvania since 1947 only had 3,600. And Pennsylvania's a bit bigger than Missouri. Matter of fact, even in British Columbia to date, from 1944 till today, 1,005 reports of UFOs. But there was a flap in 1978 that lasted for 12 months. For 7 months. They had 12 mutilated cattle, all in the same area of Ellsbury, Missouri, Lincoln County, and that area. And they had 8 reports of UFOs in that area, which were close encounters of the first kind and close encounters of the second kind, orange balls of light, and nocturnal lights. But there is one case that stands out, and you folks have to read this to believe it, and there's some photographs to go along with it. On July 27th, 1978, at approximately 12:30 a.m., a Mrs. Clora Winchler was returning to her home in Arnold, Missouri, south of St. Louis, after a visit with her brother in Beaufort, Missouri, about 50 miles west of Arnold, when her car, a 1974 Mercury Comet, was struck from the rear and lifted off the ground. By 11:30 p.m., the violent thunderstorms which had battered Missouri from the Lake of the Ozarks to Hannibal were finally quieting down and moving through to Illinois. It was shortly after midnight when she said her goodbyes and started home over Highway 50, a route she had traveled often. She had just passed through downtown Union, Missouri, when suddenly, out of the darkness, she saw what she thought was a semi-tractor trailer barreling toward her. She braced for the impact, but instead of the car, was engulfed in a blinding white light. At that moment, she felt the rear end of the car rise from the pavement, throwing her forward. She found herself looking down at the illuminated pavement through the windshield. The inside of the car heated up slightly, fogging the windows. The vehicle shook violently, vibrated, and swayed from side to side as she desperately tried to control it. The car was quickly approaching the Burboose River Bridge. She struggled to keep the car from going into the water. She pressed hard on the accelerator pedal. The engine revved but had no traction. All she could do was aim the car for the center of the 2-lane road and pray that she didn't hit the steel truss bridge spanning the river. Seconds before reaching the bridge, the light disappeared and the car was released, giving her control once again. She guided the car across and pulled to the shoulder, taking out a flashlight from the glove box. She went out to look around the back, expecting to find it severely damaged. She saw nothing unusual. An examination of the car in the daylight showed 2 indentations on the trunk lid, and paint in and around the indentations was unbroken. Not wanting to return to Union, she drove to Arnold to report the incident to the local police, and around 4 a.m., she and her husband, Ken, returned to Union to file a formal report with the Union police. By the next morning, the Union police would have 3 more reports. The amount of this all takes place in 7 months. Cattle mutilations, they're all documented. The UFO reports are all documented, and I will guarantee you that I couldn't find 5 UFO researchers that even know about these cases. Anybody that wants to check these cases out, they're available on MIG, which is the Missouri UFO Investigators Group. And they have a website under Missouri Investigators Group Facebook. Their website has all these cases. Marley's Woods. There's just so much information there on this website on these cases that all take place out in the Midwest. I mean, there's triangle cases, there's mutilation cases, of course the Missouri Flap of 78, the Marley Woods case. There's even information, a lot of information, on the Gulf Breeze case from 1987, or some people know it as the Ed Walters case. But that's just my reply to that guy. If he wants to contact them, all he has to do is ask for Barbara Becker. She's the one that runs that operation. And the website has just an enormous amount of stuff on it. But a lot of stuff does happen in the Midwest, and Missouri is and has been a hotspot for a long time. And I'm sure that Lon can verify that also. It's an amazing place. The landscaping, everything from Bigfoot, crop circles, abductions. I mean, the place is just loaded with information and a lot of strange stuff going on. So I just wanted to reply to that gentleman, and there's his information, and keep listening to Spaced Out Radio.
Excellent. Thank you, Don, for checking us out. Drop us a note and say hello as well, if you wouldn't mind. Lon, how you been doing? What have you been working on?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I don't know. The last time I was on here, I guess we hadn't started into these investigation of these flying humanoids in the Chicago area, but since early April, that's pretty well what I've been concentrating on. It's been fairly unusual and actually historical, in my opinion. This is something that's, as far as that type of phenomena, this is probably the biggest group of sightings since the Mothman incidents back in '66 and '67 in Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
And we're going to get heavily into the whole Chicago Phantom scenario pretty quick here in the show. But do we see a lot more people, Lon, in your opinion, starting to take notice of these experiences compared to, say, years ago? Are people more open to the idea of things wandering through the woods or flying through the air that they're just not used to seeing?
Well, I've always had reports of flying humanoids or something, something similar to that, as well as other cryptid sightings. But I've been receiving reports, it seems more on a more consistent basis over the last couple of years. And I think there may be a lot of factors to that. First of all, it's out there on the internet much more than it used to be. People have access to information, as well as you've got all these paranormal cryptid television shows that offer information. So, I think people aren't as inhibited as they used to be, and which is good for us. I mean, we get some good sighting reports and areas to investigate.
Do you still try and get out in the field as much as you can, Lon, or is it to the point where you have so many sources who know how to get a hold of you that you're pretty much like a quarterback behind your telephone and computer now?
That's a pretty good analysis. That's pretty well what it is. I mean, if I can get out, yeah, I will. But, for the most part, most of my personal or physical investigations are spiritual related at this point. If they're local or whatever. Since I hooked up with Butch several years ago, he and his people have been going out and checking a lot of the phenomena that's been reported in the Pennsylvania area. But I've been lucky enough to have other investigators and researchers get involved with the cases that I report on the blog. And that's the situation in Chicago at the moment. We currently have about 6 investigators working directly with us, plus a few others that are behind the scene as well.
Now, Butch, how hard is it or how easy is it these days for you at UFO Cop to get information from people? Because you can't be everywhere. The people still have to be your eyes and ears.
Well, we try to talk to everybody face to face. I mean, an initial contact would either be a telephone call or via email, but before the investigation starts or during the investigation in the very beginning, I really want to talk to the people face to face, and I want to see what they're talking about, the landscape and a bunch of other things. And it's gotten a little easier over time. People seem more apt to talk to you. A lot of times, I remember not too far back where, to get anybody to talk to you, you almost had to promise them a Christmas gift and a bottle of whiskey. But no, they've really people have taken an interest. I don't know why, or if they have more belief in what they're seeing or what they think they're seeing, but we don't really have a problem with that anymore. If I say to somebody, give me a day I can talk to you or come up and visit you or whatever, I mean, they're really apt to jump right on the bandwagon and give me a date, a time, a place, and everything else.
How hard is it to build that credibility, guys? I know you both of you have been doing this for eons now, but did it take a while to build that credibility where people would just call you and give you that information? And I'll tell you the reason why I asked that is pretty soon up here in British Columbia, there is no paranormal group, there is no cryptid group, and it surprises me that there's no UFO group either, considering our area here has the trifecta of everything going on that would be an investigator's dream. So we're actually in the process of starting that up. But do you think that it takes time for people to get rid of that wariness before they feel that they can trust you to make that phone call, on?
Yeah, I believe so. I think in my case in particular, because of the blog, and I've been doing the blog now since 2005. But I'm steadily putting material up there that people are sending me, and now I'm getting much more than I ever did. I think it's based on credibility. I'm not hesitant to put things up there that people tell me. I take everybody's word, for granted until I prove otherwise, and give them the benefit of the doubt. And by doing that, I have stumbled across some very interesting cases. And this Chicago Phantom sightings is a perfect example. Though I've never had anything quite this unusual and sustained. But, this was something I basically fell into, and it just built up from there.
Do you still enjoy it, Lon? Do you still enjoy the hunt, the chase, the weird stories that are continually going on?
Oh, if I didn't, I wouldn't do this. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Butch, how about you? See a day when you actually may retire from this stuff?
Yeah, when I take the big dirt nap. No, what Lon said, giving everybody the benefit of a doubt. If you say if somebody gives you a report, whether you get it by email or however you get it, over the internet, however, and you say you're going to look into it, you need to be honest and look into it. Don't blow them off, and don't not return the call, or not make the call, or not look into it. The credibility of the investigator is just as important as the information the investigator is getting. But again, until proven otherwise, you take them at their word, and you listen, and you look, and you ask a lot of questions, and that starts it right there. But it's got to be a bond between the investigator or researcher and the person giving that report to that investigator or researcher. And there has to be some element of trust in the very beginning, and then it builds from there.
Lon, I've never asked you this question, but I'm going to. Bruce, you don't need, or Butch, pardon me, you don't need to answer, because I think every third or fourth show I've asked you this question. But Lon, how do you sort out the real stories from those people who are just trying to pull the wool over your eyes?
I guess it's probably just by experience, but it's usually when I get back to the individual, either by email or I really try to talk to them by phone. There are certain ways that they convey what they have seen or they've experienced that gives me an idea of if it's true or not, or it's being embellished or whatever. And I will not post something I just don't believe is true. Now, there's a lot of stuff I'll put in that, has some fantastic value to it, I guess, but it's something I'm not going to dwell on. But those cases that I really believe that the individual believes what they saw and can back it up when they talk to me and answer my questions forthrightly and truthfully and not embellish. Yeah, those are the ones I really take the extra step with.
If somebody is refusing to talk on the phone, is that kind of a clear sign that you may have someone who's trying to pull the wool over your eyes?
Usually, but I have had instances where people have refused to talk to me for a sustained period of time, that eventually they will talk to me. Some witnesses, they feel compelled to tell you about it or mention it to you through an email, but they just refuse to talk to you for whatever reason. I mean, each person has their own reason for that. But I've been able, for the most part, to get people to talk to me. It's not a matter of me browbeating them and telling them I need to talk to them and keep contacting them. But, if I'm pretty insistent when there's something I believe there may be some actual basis to.
Let's get into the whole cryptid scenario that is happening in Chicago. And Butch, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to focus on Lon here because you and I talked about this on the last time. Lon, take us through the history of these new Chicago phantom sightings. When did they start?
Well, the initial sightings started back in 2011. There were 3 sightings in the fall, late summer, early fall of 2011. I included those as part of this because there was a photograph of the first sighting. It kind of looked like a huge bat, but we really couldn't tell what it is. It was an interesting photo. I don't think it was something that someone contrived. The woman who took the photo was not a resident of Chicago. They were actually from Tasmania. And they described it as a huge sugar glider. Well, if you know what a sugar glider is, it's something that fits in the palm of the hand. But it's almost almost like a flying squirrel, but this thing was much, much bigger. So that's kind of what it looked like. That's what they compared it to. So there were 3 sightings throughout Chicago. I guess the most interesting sighting was on Pulaski Road. That was the one where the photo was taken at. Then there was another one over by the University of Chicago, Hyde Park area. And then there was another one a little closer downtown. But it was just the 3 sightings. And, they were spread out over 3 months. So, everything was quiet after that. Then back in April, MUFON, on the MUFON case management system, there was a report of a large humanoid that was said to be 7 foot or taller, and it was standing in Oz Park in Chicago. We later got the information who this person was, and one of our colleagues, Manuel Navarrete, actually did a face-to-face interview with her. Anyway, this thing was standing in the park. She had her dog, she was walking her dog, and they came upon this thing, and she stated that it was real dark in color, black possibly. Stood about 7 foot, but it had wings that were extending from the back that were actually a foot or so taller than the being. She watched it for a bit, and I guess after a while it realized that she was there watching it, and it turned, and she saw these bright ruby red eyes that she said glowed. And not long after that, this thing shot up into the air like a rocket, went up to a certain height, unfurled the wings, and then flapped and took off. So that sighting was on the 7th of April of this year. So there were other sightings that started coming in. There was another sighting in at the Chicago International Produce Market, where there were multiple witnesses. They called this thing a huge owl-like humanoid with bright yellow-red eyes. Several people saw that. And there was another report of an owl-like being near Humboldt Park. And this was also seen by several of the residents. So this kept going on and kept going on. And these sightings started spreading southwards as well. So we were getting sightings in the city, the west part of the city and south of the city. And it just progressed from there. And the descriptions, for the most part, have been a 6 to 7 foot being. Some have been seen standing, perching, but most have been in flight. They say the wingspan is anywhere from 8 to 10 foot in width. And that it's very fast, and this thing moves very quickly. Some of them have the bright red eyes. Sometimes they don't see that at all. There are a few variations. The wing structure has gone anywhere from the Mothman-like feathered wing or a rounded wing to that of an owl. And then most of the sightings since then, since maybe the beginning of May, have been mostly bat-like membrane wings. And that's where we go from here. And not including the 3 sightings in 2011, we now have 38 sightings that we have investigated and followed up on.
Now, Butch, when you listen to Lon say this, and you've been investigating the Chicago story for the better part of 2 months now, is there anything that catches your eye in regards to the sightings people are having?
Yeah, the fact that the descriptions, although not exact, are very close. And that in itself is unusual because, you can have something in the woods and one person will see one thing and the person next to him sees another thing. Same thing with UFO sightings. And the fact that in one of the cases that Lon's group is investigating, 2 police officers seen this thing. And they said they filed a report. And when a FOIA request was presented to the police department, they said there was no report filed. So I tend to believe the police officers off the get-go. I mean, why would they even say something like that? And they weren't the only ones there. They were actually stopped by a group of people. So I think people are seeing something out there. From all reports and background research that I've been doing on it, they are seeing something. And the area that this thing seems to stay in, although quite large when you look on a map, when you do look at that map, it's really a small area. And another fact is they seem to hang around water a lot. And I guess in one of the early on cases, some people on a boat were actually buzzed by it. So thankfully no injuries from this thing. I know a lot of people are trying to push it into the the Point Pleasant Mothman situation, and I really don't know. I don't have any idea what it could be. It could be dimensional, could be interdimensional, could be flesh and blood, could not be. Just the guys out there are doing a fantastic job, and some photos have been taken. But when you have something up in the sky that's high, and you're taking it with a cell phone camera, everything starts to look alike after a while. And when you do look at the photographs, it does look bat-like to me. And I guess we're just going to have to wait and see where this goes. I mean, it hasn't stopped. 38 sightings now, and it's not like they slowed down. I mean, they're almost not a daily basis, but there's 1 or 2 or 3 a week. And a lot of the people that were questioned were more than happy to give their statement. I don't remember reading where any of them backed off. And it's a wide variety of people. It's not just young folks. It's older folks, police officers, professional people, and I know it's not a guy in a suit, and it's not a drone. So what it is, we don't know yet, but everybody's working on it, trying to figure it out.
I think there's a great comment from Canadian Joe here on Twitter. He says, I'm not surprised, but you think that with all of this activity, the mainstream media would have had no choice but to report on it. Lon, I'm going to get your comment on that as well, because we have seen Chicago media report on things like this. A number of years ago, when there was the giant UFO sighting over O'Hare International, they reported on that. So why have they gone silent with this one, especially when we have, like Butch says, police officers who have actually filed reports on this creature?
Well, UFOs are a mainstream phenomenon. I mean, people know about UFOs. When it comes to flying humanoids, that's a different story. Some of the media in Chicago have reported on it, and the Tribune did have a story. We've got a lot of I've been interviewed on several of the local radio stations, and we have had people that we know that work for the city that have commented, and I also work in the city hall, who have commented that, yeah, the city definitely knows about it, but they don't want the word getting out on us. It's kind of been muted. I believe. I don't know if this goes as far as the print media or the television media, if they're being asked not to report on something. I don't know that. but I have every indication to believe that the local government has definite knowledge of what's going on, and they are aware of it.
Are they trying to cover it up, much like Fife Symington did in Phoenix with the Phoenix Lights?
Yeah, very well may be. Chicago's had its issues. It's probably one of the more dysfunctional cities in the country at this moment. There have been a lot of problems there, and economically, it's kind of on edge right now. And I believe since this started in the time of the year when there's tourism in the city and lots of people are visiting, I think they're trying to tap it down as much as possible.
Butch, what's your take on the media side and the government side, like Lon just stated?
I agree wholeheartedly with Lon. I mean, Chicago right now, their bonds are worthless. I mean, they have a crime problem that's out of control. They've got defaults going on pretty much daily. They can't even fund their own retirement plans. But to keep this quiet would be probably obvious on their part. But I think, I don't know if Lon mentioned it, I believe Playboy's doing a story on it, and or a piece. And I think once somebody like that with that name recognition puts out this thing, it's gonna move along pretty quick.
I think so too. Why, in your opinion, Butch, do you see the government of Chicago trying to cover this up? Is it just another problem that they have that they don't want the press for? Would that be it?
Yeah. I mean, they did the same thing with the O'Hare case. I mean, you had everybody that was on the ground at the airport saying, yeah, this is what we saw, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. And then you had the news going like, oh, well, it was meteorological disturbance, was probably a storm coming up. I mean, they came up with all kind of excuses. But, these cities don't want, or why would they say that the cops didn't file a report when the cops swore and declared in their report that they made a report? And they just don't want it out. I mean, Chicago's got so many problems now. This would just be adding on to it. And right now, they're just trying to keep everything on the back burner.
I don't get it. I really don't. I can understand if there was a UFO sighting, okay, like at Chicago O'Hare. I mean, you just can't have a giant UFO going over one of North America's most busiest airports, if not the busiest airport, and one of the most busiest in the world. However, when it comes to this creature with so many multiple sightings in such a short time, you think the city would say something about it, or at least hope they would address the citizens if people are talking about it, Butch.
Well, yeah, you would think so, but, you got so many things going on there right now. I mean, if you look at if you want to pick out the black spot in the cities in the United States, Chicago's going to be number one on the list. And although there's parts of Chicago that are, really super nice and, very well to do, the other problems they have with their finances and their crime and et cetera, it's just, Chicago is Chicago. Chicago's been that way since government first started. When they had the gangs run in Chicago, the mayor said there were no gangs in Chicago. When bootlegging was a big deal in Chicago, they said there was no bootlegging in Chicago. So what's the difference between that and us saying that there could be something in the skies that we don't know what it is and people are seeing it, and them stepping up and saying there is no such thing in the sky? So I can't see so much tourism would affect that part of the area, because again, these sightings are contained in a relatively small area, And we did have one recently that was down in Indiana that was really different, and Lon can tell you about that. And, you know, all I needed was a get-go from Lon to go, and we were ready to roll to Indiana to, you know, check it out. But unfortunately, the people never got back to us.
Lon, do you care to tell us about what happened in Indiana?
Well, what's going on? First of all, we've got I'd say for the last 5 or 6 weeks, I get anywhere from 10 to 20 phone calls daily just from residents of Chicago who are literally scared to death of the reports of this thing. I think there's some fear involved here where the city doesn't want to ramp it up anymore than what it is. Now they're aware of the fear. I mean, we haven't been given or told of any specific 911 calls or any other distress calls or anything related to this phenomenon, but believe me, I'm quite sure it has happened. So, you know, I'm just going to throw that in there. So anyway, yeah, down in Indiana, and this is actually part of the, you know, not far off the Chicago city line or the Illinois-Indiana border. There was an area down in North Hammond, Indiana, near a golf course where a witness was stating that they had seen, as they were driving by the golf course, they had seen these 2 red lights emanating from just above the lake at the golf course. Well, it was an unusual report. There was no anything specific other than that they had this really weird, bizarre feeling about what they had seen. And, you know, it was some place that they had gone past a lot and they had never seen anything like this before. Well, anyway, that sighting in particular, if you look at the overall amount of sightings that fall within a 10-mile radius of that sighting, we've had about 5 or 6 of them. Plus, we've had other ones as well, though they were lesser sightings and weren't put on the map. But I got an anonymous telephone call and an email from 2 different people from the Hammond, Indiana area who literally were upset with me reporting that this thing had been seen at that golf course. Now, apparently, they had seen something for several months now, and they have actually seen this flying being, whatever it is, feeding on fish or other wildlife in this area. Now that, you know, we've got the golf course and we've got a lake that's just north of that before you get into to Lake Michigan. So apparently there have been some sightings there over the years. And quite frankly, Hammond, Indiana has been known for a lot of weird things over the years. I don't know why it is, but I have had all kinds of crazy reports from there for years. So after I got this this phone call, then I got the email. I contacted one of the nature centers near there and left it was on Sunday. I left a message. And within a couple hours, one of the naturalists from that center called me and told me that, asked me to describe what people have been seeing. And I told her, and she said, look, we have had reports in that area before. We don't know what it is. She gave me a specific area to look at, which is within the confines of the area I mentioned. So there's something going on there. Now, I don't know if it's the same being, something different, but it's something unusual that they've never seen before. And the fact that this thing may inhabit that area is interesting in itself, because I this is the first time we've had any indication that it has a roosting area or some place where it lives and feeds at. So it's something we're going to look into, and hopefully we can get somebody out there to look at it.
Lon, do you think this creature, whatever it may be, is territorial or has a very vast territory to cover?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's just one being. I think it's at least 3 of them. And the reason I say that is because of the different descriptions and some of the actual areas it's been roaming at. And in fact, I don't believe it. For the most part, it's something that's actually inhabiting the area. I think this thing's coming in from some type of alternate reality of some type for whatever reason. I think it is flesh and blood, but I believe it's supernatural and multidimensional as well. I mean, that may sound pretty fantastic, but the veil's thinning. I mean, for years and years now, are the reports that we have been receiving about a lot of different phenomena, in particular cryptids, tends to make you believe that these things come and go quickly. There have been Bigfoot reports, especially in the eastern and central part of the United States, where somebody will follow this thing or see this thing and it'll just disappear. I mean, why and how that happens, the possibility that it has the ability to do that, makes you think. And, I'll be honest with you, I'm open to all possibilities with this phenomenon in Chicago. I don't know what these beings are. I don't know why they're here. And, but I think it has something to do with the city itself and something related to the city is their connection. It could be. But as far as the witnesses and connection with the witnesses, I don't know if there really is any connection there.
What do you think, Butch? Do you think this is a creature of an alternative reality?
I think it could be. We've seen things popping up all over the country that weren't there before. Flying ape-like creatures in the Colorado area, out in the Four Corners area. We have the bipedal canines here in central Pennsylvania, Dogman out in Wisconsin. Animals or creatures that, especially with the bipedals, what surprised me was I thought, okay, this is something new. This just popped up. This could be misidentification, blah, blah, blah. And then I find a report, and I said this before, back in the 1800s, mid-1800s, where a newspaper report in Erie, Pennsylvania, it was a sighting report from a farmer to the newspaper, and he describes the same thing, exactly. The size, the weight, the shape, what it looked like, how it acted, right down to the glowing yellow eyes. That's mid-1800s. And, we're seeing these things now since 2014. So where'd they come from? Where have they been that nobody's seen them up until 2014, and now we're seeing them? We're getting reports pretty much. It seems especially with the bipedals, where we'll get 3 or 4 or 5 reports, then we don't get anything for 6-8 months, and then we'll get 2 or 3 or 4 more reports, and then we don't see anything for a couple more months. So evidently they're not staying in one area. They don't leave the loop. The ones that we're investigating are not outside the loop. And interdimensional, I really don't know enough about that. That's more in Lon's line. I mean, he's been at that a lot longer than I have. But is it something that could come from alternative reality? Yeah, I guess it could. I mean, you got to keep an open mind. Like you can't blow it off and say, "Oh, that's nonsense," because the minute you do that, that's when it's going to come back to bite you in the butt.
Gentlemen, we only have about 2 minutes here before we have to go to break, and I think that actually brings up a very interesting topic that I'd like to get into with both you in hour number 2, and Butch, it's somewhere we really haven't gone, but this alternative reality that you brought forward, Lon, I think that's important because I think we have a lot of researchers out there who are trying to process opinion as actual fact because they may not believe what you or Butch think, that there are other theories that are potentially reality out there. And I want to get into that, guys, because I think it's important that we do so. You know, there may be a lot of people out there who don't agree with what we're going to say or get into, but the fact is, all you have to do is talk to some First Nations or Native Americans about some of these spiritual aspects of these creatures, and they will fill you in. It's that simple. Would you agree, Butch?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first made my contact with the First Nations in Oklahoma to describe what people have been reporting to me, I mean, the guy read it off like he was reading it out of a book.
Absolutely. And Lon, I'm sure you found the same thing.
Oh, yeah, this is something that's been, it's been out there for many, many years. I mean, Stan Gordon, who's a well-known researcher here in Pennsylvania, has theorized that Bigfoot in particular has a connection with the UFO sightings. And, I've got my own theories on UFOs as well. So, there very well may be connection with that.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to get you guys to hold on here. We're going to hop out for our first break of the night. Butch Witkowski, Lon Strickler joining us for Strange Days. It's Butch's segment that happens the final Monday of every month. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4 Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we're going to be talking about the Ouija board with Ryan Willey and his lifelong stories about his connection to the board. We'll see where it goes. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. I want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Stibogram. Stibogram is your password, or is it Stibogram? stibogram, or stibogram. That is your password for tonight, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others. Don't forget to hit subscribe on iTunes. We're also on iHeartRadio and TalkStream Live. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for as low as $5 a month. You can read up on the encounter online, rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, check out UFO Seekers or Contact TV, and so much more. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. The final Monday of the month means it's time for Strange Days with Butch Witkowski. He's also brought along a good friend of his, Lon Strickler from monstersandphantoms.com. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
Good to be here.
Now, right before the break, Lon, you said something very interesting about alternative reality. There are a lot of people out there, mainly in the Sasquatch crowd, who tend to believe that anything that discusses interdimensional, alternative, shape-shifting is part of this whole, and I hate this term, woo-woo factor that they have going. I know with my own Bigfoot experience that I had, I am leaning towards what a lot of First Nations say, that it is either interdimensional or shape-shifting. How does this hurt the field, Lon, when we have so many investigators out there claiming they are conducting scientific research on this, but they're eliminating theories before they've even investigated them?
Well, it's not really scientific if that's the case, in my opinion. I mean, there's been, there's the flesh and blood theory that's been going on for eons, and but this alternative theory has also been out there as well. And in fact, from researchers I have talked to over the years and lately, the tide is turning a bit. No bodies have been found. No DNA has been specifically pointed toward another type of species, or so I think more and more people who have been on the one side are starting to look on the other. Those sitting on the fence are starting to open their minds up a little bit more. There are actual researchers and investigators who I've known for years who were absolutely solid that this is a flesh and blood species, and it very well may be, but it strictly habitates on this earth plane in our forest and wherever, and that it is an actual being that inhabits his world. And a lot of them have also changed their minds, and they're starting to look into alternative theories. And when I started talking about this years ago, there was a lot of pushback. I agree. I mean, it was terrible. I mean, there were times where people would just not even read what I posted about it, and I'd get all kinds of crazy responses and comments, but not anymore. I mean, I think it's starting to become mainstream, and people are starting to open their minds up to it.
How about you, Butch?
Well, it's I've noticed it in reports only in the last few years, anyway, where Bigfoot sightings are also accompanied by bright flashes of light. One of our bipedal reports states that there was a bright silver aura around the creature. So what's that all about? And the visual contact, and this is by no way demeaning how anybody does their research, But when they say they're doing scientific research, to me, you know, if something like that is seen, like an aura around the creature or a bright flash of light, and then the creature is no longer there, or whatever it was is no longer there, then the scientific part of it has to change. I mean, walking through the woods, I mean, I could walk through all the woods in Pennsylvania until I drop over dead. Doesn't mean I'm going to see anything. So what I wish they would do more of is concentrate on an area where they've had numerous sightings and, you know, camera trap the place to death, get more people out. This walking through the woods screaming and yelling ain't going to do anything. And even if you would just catch that flash of light that people report seeing, or something standing in the woods with some type of, the camera catches some type of aura, colored aura around the animal or whatever it is, that to me would be a lot more scientific. The possibility that it's coming from an alternative reality or another plane or coming through a doorway whenever it wants to, that's not, should I say, out of the realm. We need to keep a way open mind on this. If you would have said this to me 5 or 6 years ago, I would have probably laughed at you. But I've read so many reports and seen so many, talked to so many researchers, and saw so many weird things happen, even on our own expeditions, that no, I don't put that out of the realm at all. My mind is more open to that now than it's ever been. And like I said, when you talk to the indigenous, they're telling you exactly what people are seeing, and I believe them.
Lon, a lot of people will say that, you know, there is nothing interdimensional out there in regards to a living, breathing creature. How do we know that this is even a possibility? What makes you believe?
Well, from witness testimony for the most part. You know, recently, and when I say recent, I mean like the last several years, a lot of the, and I'm just going to talk in particular about Pennsylvania, a lot of the Bigfoot sightings have been accompanied by these orbs of light, where a researcher would get a report of something being seen, go back to the area and see these orbs of light or strange light anomalies. This has been going on now more and more. Is that a connection to interdimensional travel, interdimensional reality? I don't know. It very well may be. I mean, you know, it's interesting. I got involved with an habituation area and witness up in Nova Scotia about 4 or 5 years ago. Gentleman contacted me to let me know that he had a farm. He had a pretty good-sized farm in north central Nova Scotia, and he was telling me that he had all kinds of activity going on the farm, but in particular, he had these Sasquatch that were roaming around the area. He was seeing them, you know, mostly at a distance, but at night they would get into his farm, get into his barn, killed several chickens, attacked several of the hogs on his farm with photographic evidence. And he told me a few odd things, that they seem to show up certain times of the year, though. In the warm weather, warm periods of time, they seem to actually live at the area. But he had one instance that stood out that made me believe that, yeah, we may be dealing with something other than, you know, an actual being staying in one area. He noticed this large orb-like craft come down into the field across from his house. And as he watched it, he saw a Sasquatch step out of it. Now, there was another being as well that stepped out of it. He didn't get a very good look at that. The next day, when he went to look at the area where this UFO was, he got a set of footprints that actually they looked like huge turkey prints, you know, the splayed foot. But this thing was like 13, 14 inches long and probably 15 to 18 inches wide. This was this other being or whatever this was. Now, as far as the Bigfoot coming out of the craft, I mean, this guy, he wasn't delusional. He was a very forthright guy. He had other encounters with UFOs on his property. He had infestation of orbs. He had pictures of at night. It was just unbelievable, some of the things that he was seeing. But unfortunately, and I don't know if this had anything to do with the UFO encounters, close encounters he had, he died of a very rare disease not long afterwards. So it's it was a very strange period of time that I looked into it. But you know, after that, you know, I don't discount anything now.
Butch, I'm going to take you down that same road in regards to, you know, the experiences people are having where they are seeing strange things that are out of the ordinary, that do not confine themselves to what we would consider mainstream science. Are we just brushing them off because we're not supposed to believe that?
I think I think most researchers do. But that's one of those shame on you things. You can't brush this stuff off. I mean, even if it takes you nowhere, I mean, at least you looked, you tried, you investigated, you researched, you passed on the information with other researchers, you looked at other cases. You know, you call it the hoo-hoo factor. We call it the laugh factor. The giggle factor only comes from people that don't do anything or don't understand anything, or, you know, all their information off of the internet. You know, everything on the internet's true. But when I talk to, you know, a researcher that goes out every weekend, and he's telling me about seeing a flash of light after he hears something in the woods, or a howl or something like that. What's the flash of light? It's broad daylight. There's no storm in the area. It's not lightning. There's no boom. It's just a bright flash of light. And then the noise goes away, or the howl stops. So that has a lot of credibility to it. And I think when researchers start separating what their thoughts are on what it could be and what is reported to them, they're making a judgment that is way ahead of themselves. They need to really stop and give that some thought. And, you know, when I got my first bipedal report, I looked at it and I was like, why am I getting this? You know, I don't know anything about this. But I'm a believer now.
Lon,
I think Butch has been hanging around me too long. I mean, Butch's life was nice and quiet until he met me about 4 or 5 years ago. Then it's kind of going downhill from there.
Lon, you have no idea how familiar that is. I have had so many friends of mine come up to me and say, you know what, nothing like this happened to me until I started hanging out with you, Dave. And they all blame me as well. So you and I are in the blame court, Lon. You and I are in the blame court. Hey, I do have a quick question for you, Lon, about your story in Nova Scotia, because one of our listeners on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio, Michelle, is in Nova Scotia, and she's wondering where these were happening.
The only location, I can give you a general location, it was north central north central Nova Scotia. It was the area. It was close to the coast. It was a farm that was close to the coast, but because of my promise to the witness and his family, I'm not going to disclose anything beyond that.
I think that's fair. It's by you, Michelle. Put it that way. Nova Scotia isn't that big. It's not that big. You can walk across it. Not like BC here. I'm just teasing her. But no, I do understand that. When it comes to the whole alternative reality of these creatures, and Butch, we'll start with you on this one. Do you believe these creatures have the ability to just disappear, or are they so good in nature that they could just hide right in front of us and we would never see them?
Oh, look, when I was still hunting, I walked within 2 foot of a coyote. And the guy I was hunting with turned around and said, "Didn't you see the coyote?" And I said, "What coyote?" He said, "You walked right past it. I never saw it." So, yeah, they could be that good, or could be the other way. They could be there, not be there. But walking past something in the woods happens all the time. A friend of mine was hunting deer and heard a rustle behind him, turned around, thought it was a deer coming up the trail. Turned out to be 2 black bear. He had to walk past them to get to that point. He never saw them. So, yeah, these animals are in their own element. I mean, they're very good at what they do as far as hiding. And I'm assuming that these other things that we're looking for are just as good, or they have some other thing on their side that can make them there and not there. When you talk about stuff that's interdimensional, I'm still looking at that farm, and those distortions are still there. Now, they're not in the same place at all anymore. I mean, they've moved. But they're still there, and I have no idea what they are. So I've pretty much scratched out that they're flesh and blood because they have no shape or anything like that. And they have nothing to do with the ground or the building or anything like that. But those distortions are still there. So I'm seeing them on a FLIR device. Nothing hides from a FLIR device. I don't care what it is. And so that mystery, to me, just makes my mind expand even more to what they could be, what they couldn't be. But all I know is they are there. And they have been there since December of last year. And there's only 2. They still show up as a distortion on the FLIR. The temperatures are still way colder than the outside. And, when I was there with Lon and Matt, I had Lon and Matt there, and I was looking at one through the FLIR, and I showed it to Matt, and I said, "What do you think it is?" And he went like, "I have no idea." So that's pretty much where we're at with that one. We have no idea. But they are still there.
The way creatures can camouflage themselves is quite amazing because, I mean, let's face it, that's all about their survival. I think we can fully agree on that. But the one thing that really confuses me, Butch, and then Lon will get your response, is the fact that so many of these creatures that are seen, whether they're wood nymphs like I saw, Bigfoot, Dogman, whatever it may be, hell, we'll even throw in garden gnomes because I know that's going to come up tonight. And I hate those damn things. And as soon as I say it, everybody's going to start posting any second here now pictures all over the place of damn garden gnomes. But either way, and I hate you people for doing it. I'm shaking my fist at all of you who are going to do it, and you know who you are. But nonetheless, the whole point that I'm trying to get at is, why have none of us ever seemed to take in this point very, very seriously? We're not all bad photographers or videographers, yet for some reason these creatures that we are seeing always seem to be photographed or videographed blurry. Even the wood nymph that I saw a year ago at this time, right by my house, when it came walking on the trail right in front of me, it was blurry. What is that blurriness? Have we looked into that, Butch?
Well, when I first saw them, it was at night, And then the second time I saw him, it was sort of night, not quite dark. And I've seen him at dark, and I've seen him in the daytime. So they are what they are. And somebody brought up an interesting thing on a blog that I was reading a little while back, where a gentleman who's a photographer, I mean, that's his livelihood. That's what he does for a living. Very expensive, very good, uses a Hasselblad camera, and was doing some photographic work for a company. And he was out in the parking lot and facing a wooded area, and he swore and declared that, you know, he saw this object or being of some sort, short in stature, run through the woods on two legs. And he took the shot. And it's a good shot. And if I would have to make my best guess on it, I would say it was a smaller, Bigfoot-looking creature. He is pretty much a believer now. So last time I spoke to him, he is trying to develop some more camera stuff to do some things that I quite don't understand. But there's a guy that got a good picture. But there have been other people that, you know, been 10, 15, 20 feet away and take a shot, and the area around the being that they're shooting is perfectly clear. I mean, you can count the veins in the leaves. You can see the stems. You can see the branches. You can see the ground cover. You can see everything, except the creature, which is the focus of the shot, is all blurred out. So is that something they can do? Unknown.
Lon, what's your take on the whole blurriness aspect? Is Lon still there? Do you have your microphone on mute?
Oh, I'm on now. I'm sorry.
There you go.
I think it may go back to the, you know, to a lot of what you mentioned with the native people and how they see it, and this thing can shapeshift or move around. I think that has a lot to do with it. You know, years ago I received a phone call from a woman in British Columbia who was the daughter of a Kootenai shaman. She told me that the native tribe seemed to believe that Sasquatch was a non-physical creature. Now, some of the elders mentioned that they had seen Sasquatch acting shapeshift into a wolf. Now, she said her father thought that these creatures lived in another dimension from our physical plane, but can come here as it wishes. Now, he also believed that Sasquatch had great psychic abilities and that the creature can make itself visible to some people while at the same time remain invisible to others and to other groups. I think that very well may be a lot of what's going on in Chicago. And that may be a factor as to why people can't get a photograph of it. You know, some of these witnesses have told me they have tried to take photographs of this thing, and it just doesn't show up, or it's just so blurry that they can't see it, and it's not discernible at all. I think that's a big factor in it.
One of the things that I'm interested in is we even see game cameras. Granted, animals are moving. Okay, so I can understand that. Let's get, the sciencey answer out of the way. But we even see game cameras with a lot of blurry photos of things that we cannot decipher what they are. If it's a fox or a deer or a wolf or a cougar that's blurry, we can tell what it is. But for some reason, if they are in a concentrated area where Sasquatch is or Dogman is, those pictures always seem to be very, very blurry or to the point, oversaturated to the point where you can't get a full grasp of what it is. Does that concern you, Lon?
No, it doesn't concern me, but I think it reinforces what I said before, that some of these beings just cannot be photographed or seen in certain dimensions. I mean, certain, I don't know, in an aspect of where someone can understand what it is. I mean, I've seen, like, you're right. I mean, this thing with the blurry trail cam photos, that's hard to figure out. But the fact that maybe these things can shapeshift so quickly under the circumstances, I don't know, but I'm going to keep an open mind on that. I think there's something involved there.
Butch, what about your understanding of game cams and trail cams coming out with all these blurry pictures that we can't figure out?
The ones that are really very interesting to me are the game cams that take a series of photographs. So if you have a deer walking in front, of the camera or in the camera range, you'll see it start coming from the right-hand side, and it's here, then it's there, then it stops, and it's eating, and it moves on. And then, that same camera, it caught something that's at the edge of a tree line or something else, and you'll see on the game cam and a series. So, I mean, these photographs are being taken as something's moving, and then you'll see the clear shot, and then a blurred shot, and a blurred shot, and a blurred shot, and then a clear shot again. So what's causing that? I mean, people have taken their game cams when they've had that issue, researchers, and sent them back to the company to have them tested and checked. And they come back, there's nothing wrong with them. And so do these creatures, or whatever they are, have the power, or is there something in their being that can make them impenetrable to a photograph or to electromagnetic activity, or you can go on and on with that, but there's just been too many blurry photographs. I mean, when you see a perfectly clear photograph, you can almost guarantee it's a CGI. But some of these photographs, I mean, you can see there's something there, and working on it with a Photoshop program, and working on it a little bit and washing it and stuff, and taking it apart, you can see there's something there. But why is that blurred out, and the building that it's standing aside of is perfectly clear? I mean, that makes no sense. And the other side of it is perfectly clear, but that particular section where that whatever is standing is just a blurry mess. And that happens quite a lot. And I mean, game cams are pretty sophisticated. We used them up until about 3 years ago. Then we went to surveillance cameras, which are a lot more technical, and they take a photograph every half second, regardless if something's walking there or not. So there's no triggering of the device by somebody walking in front and, the infrared picking it up and firing it off. This thing just keeps taking pictures. So I'm interested to catch something on there. Now, if I get something on that, and picture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is perfect, and picture 11 is all blurred out, I'm going to be a little upset. Those are very expensive cameras, especially if 12, 13, 14, 15 is exactly the same. It's just a weird thing. It's like the old, one footprint in the snow. How does that happen? Somebody sees a Bigfoot at the edge of a field, and there's a whole field, and it's snow covered, but they find one footprint. Why aren't there other footprints? They said it ran up into the woods and it disappeared. Well, where's the other footprints into the woods?
Mm-hmm. Lon, have you noticed that as well, that for a lot of people who do discover Bigfoot prints, most of the time there is just one print?
Yeah, I mean, I have had people encounter that before. Most of the times, though, it's a series of prints that just end all of a sudden, like the thing took off, flew away, or disappeared. That I believe that's more common than anything. That's, it's interesting. There's a researcher up in the Sierra Mountains who told me that he was actually tracking a Bigfoot. He got behind this thing and was actually looking at it. He had an eyeball on it, and as he followed it, it just disappeared, just totally disappeared, right in front of his eyes. He walked to the area where it disappeared at, looked around, and there's nowhere this thing could have gone to. So, as far as one footprint, a series of footprints that end unexpectedly, something's going on.
I think so, too. I want to get to some questions from one of my good friends, Carrie, who helps me out with my local team here. And she is asking, because she's an avid hunter as well, and she's spent a lot of time outdoors in our area. If someone is getting into cryptid hunting or investigating, what is the most imperative things to remember, or what are the best tools? Butch, let's start with you on this one.
Best tools, good camera, binoculars, a recorder, good recorder, not only for your notes, but to capture anything you might hear. Absolute a topo map of the area you're researching, and depending on where you're at, some type of protection, whether it be a can of bear spray or a non-lethal weapon or a weapon. That's about it, pretty much. And definitely with the camera, you want to have a tripod, and it doesn't have to be a tripod. It can be the bipod, so you keep the camera still. That would be equipment-wise. As far as research the area, do a lot of the background on it. Go back as far as you can. If there's a small town close by or something like that, take a visit to the town. Go to the local restaurant, ask questions, local firehouse, police department, whatever they got. And, you put it together from basically nothing. You don't have anything. You don't have a picture. You don't have a sighting. All you may have is one report or two reports. Or if you find some historical reports or a certain area that has seen it, look for areas that have water close by. If it is flesh and blood, it needs water. If it is flesh and blood, where do the kids and granny and grandpa and wife hang out? Are there caves close by? Are there old abandoned buildings? Take all that stuff into consideration. Try to put yourself in their place. If you were out there, where would you go? What would you do? Where would you find food? We've had 2 reports of the canines near orchards. Almost all of them were near water and abandoned buildings, but 2 were near orchards. So there's food, there's water, and as far as abandoned buildings, well, they're all over this state, place to hide. So that's assuming that they are not loners, that there is a family structure of some sort, which is the same thing with Bigfoot as it is with bipedals.
Mm-hmm. Follow-up question from Carrie, and Lon, I'll stick with you on this one if you don't mind, and then we'll get Butch's reaction. Up here we had devastating forest fires, and they are still burning south of us, even though they seem to be getting more and more in control now. Thank goodness. We have had literally, I think, over 1 million hectares and you multiply that by 1.2 football fields. So you're looking at about 1.2 million football fields worth of forest burn up here in British Columbia in forest fires this year, mainly around my area. And we know we have up here a very large Sasquatch population that is roaming around. So the question that we have for you is, with the fires, Lon, devastating so much territory, maybe you've never dealt with this before, but is there a possibility of more sightings because there is more open area now?
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think there's a good possibility that bodies could be found. During the Mount St. Helens eruption, there were witnesses that came forth stating that there were at least 2 Sasquatch bodies that were recovered, but recovered by the government, and they actually saw these things being airlifted out. As far as these beings being concentrated now into other areas because of the fires, well, and I do believe the Pacific Northwest does have an indigenous population of Sasquatch. I mean, I really do believe that. It's one of the only areas maybe in the world that actually does, other than maybe in Russia and Siberia. But saying that, as far as them concentrating in another territory, I don't know. I mean, I don't think they're going to want to stumble into another Sasquatch's territory. That may be a problem. So the fact that they go great distances to get to someplace else that's, where they can eat and live quietly and have their own territory, yeah, that may very well be. But I don't know. I don't know if that, may make them more accessible to, a researcher or an investigator or not.
And I guess the thinking is, is there a water source nearby? I know where we found the prints, there's a lot of water sources nearby. And, I could see the Sasquatch staying in that territory. The difference between, Mount St. Helens and us, I mean, St. Helens, when she blew up, it happened so fast. I could see there being no way of escape for something along their lines in regards to that, which caused mass flooding and rivers to rise, creeks to rise. But with this one, with the fires burning, I could see the Sasquatch obviously going in the opposite direction of the smoke. And there was plenty of territory for them to do that, especially if they headed west. So I'm not sure if we would find a body per se, but have you ever heard of any reports, and Butch, you can jump in on this as well, have you heard of any reports in forest fire affected areas where Sasquatch has moved closer to population or just got the hell out of Dodge for a while?
No, I haven't. No, not
me either.
I haven't heard any reports like that.
I haven't either. I really haven't. I mean, there have been a lot of forest fires down here in the lower 48 as well, and especially in Northern California. And I honestly have not heard of any reports of people noticing these things moving off into other areas.
Interesting indeed.
Doesn't mean that it did.
Right. But would they stay in the same area? Or would they return to that area? Or do we think they are nomadic enough that because that area was close to the forest fires, once they got the hell out of Dodge and back into safety of the forest, that they would leave? Or do we know if they would come back, or know even if the forest fires are out?
That's a good question. Now, there have been some researchers that say they're nomadic, and then there's other researchers that say they're territorial, and they kind of stay where they started. I don't know how they would know that. Just like some researchers say that they have the exact number of Bigfoot that are roaming around the lower 48. I don't know how they know that unless they took a census. There's a lot of unanswered questions with that one that I couldn't answer any of those. I mean, I guess common sense would be that there's a fire, you'd get away from it. But depending on the amount or types of water that'd be around, I mean, if I was in a forest fire, I'd be looking for water. But then again, I don't know. That's a good question.
You know, I've heard for years of, you know, where investigators or researchers state that there are migration routes. You know, I've heard, well, in particular, I had a gentleman who lived out in western Washington State, and even though that area is much different than the coastal areas, he swore that there were migration areas from western Washington into Idaho, then north up into as far as the Banff area up in Alberta. I don't know if that's true, but he swore he heard that. I mean, he swore that he saw that by some of the information that he had received or seen. You know, here in the East Coast, they have talked about Sasquatch actually migrating from the mountains of Pennsylvania into West Virginia and back and forth. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't particularly believe that there's an actual population, a flesh and blood tribe-like population, but they very well could be. I mean, if they are, then they're going through areas where it's not that easy to see them. Believe me, Pennsylvania, you know, if you're talking about areas like in the ridge lines, like at Chestnut Ridge down south into West Virginia, way down into South Dolly Sods and those areas, those are thick. And, you know, it's hard to keep track of anything going through there. You know, Butch and I have looked at the upright canine possibly migrating through the valleys of Pennsylvania in through in between the ridges south into Maryland and into Virginia and West Virginia. I think that may be possible, but then again, there's not any real evidence to that actually happening, though it's possible. I mean, you know, Butch and I were coming back from Western Pennsylvania back in May, and it was interesting. We were coming through southern Pennsylvania from Chambersburg going into the Michaud State Forest, and I didn't realize, but I'm sitting there in his truck looking out ahead of me, and you could actually see the ridge lines north and south, as far south into West Virginia, just from on the road. I mean, and they were high, very high ridge lines, and, you know, and they were thick. And, you know, you just think about it. These things were migrating, and even Sasquatch, you know, there's Sasquatch migrating there. And Michaud has been known for Sasquatch sightings for years. Maybe it is possible for them to migrate if there was something, you know, unless they, you know, had an actual migration, annual migration, or they had a fire or something where they can move off and not be seen. And, you know, Pennsylvania has this very thick forest with laurel, and, you know, we had some really heavy, dense forest. And, you know, you said out in British Columbia, it's the same thing. So, yeah, I mean, I guess they can move off undetected.
Carrie would like to know as well if you guys have either heard of whether or not, I mean, we hear about, you know, Sasquatch or Dogman being kind of territorial, but are they willing to live in the exact same area? Are they willing to share territory, especially if it's abundant with food?
You know, I looked into that theory a year or so ago, where I plotted Bigfoot reports as with the reports that we had of the bipedal canine. And surprisingly, where we had the bipedal canine sightings, we had no. Now, I only went back to 2014 because that's when they started with the bipedal. So from 2014 up until the present, I have no Bigfoot reports or sightings in the areas where I have bipedal sightings.
I believe the upright canines and the Bigfoot, I think they stay away from each other. I really do. I think a lot of that has to do with the ridges and the valleys in the state. We've got a lot of mountainous areas. We got 4 distinct mountain ranges within the state that run southwest to northeast, and a lot of wilderness area yet. And but I think they do stay away from each other. And in particular in this area we call the Lake and Loop area, and there, you're right. There have not been that many Bigfoot sightings at all in the last couple of years. Most of the sightings are concentrated in certain areas like Chestnut Ridge, Fayette County, in other areas south central Pennsylvania, and other areas. But I think they are territorial in that aspect, but as far as territorial within their own species, I think the upright canines kind of stick, will stick together like in possible packs. I mean, I think it's possible. I think that's a real that's a reality. I think they have to actually.
I'm just wondering because I realize that they don't do borders, okay? And I know that sounds like a stupid observation, but we know these creatures don't do borders. However, it does make sense that if they are integrating with each other, that you think that they would have some sort of respect, or at least have been seen colliding with one another in the forest. I mean, there has to be an eyewitness sighting who has seen something like that. Have either of you heard of someone seeing Bigfoot versus Dogman at any time?
Yeah, I have. I mean, up in northern Minnesota, J.C. Johnson and Ron Shaw have been working in an habituation area for the past 2 years in northern Minnesota, almost into the Canadian line, the Canadian territory, where there seemed to be a distinct tribe of these upright canines and also several other Sasquatch in the area. And from what I understand, there have been clashes in the past. And in fact, I think Ron had actually seen 2 of these beasts attacking each other. So, yeah, I mean, they do seem to not get along with each other, but I don't know if that's just that one area or not. I have not heard of anything locally here.
Butch, would you like to weigh in on that? Have you heard that?
No, but then again, I've only been following the stuff we have here in Pennsylvania. I would think, I agree with Lon, I think there's more than one bipedal. The fact that the description of the wolf, especially that, just leads me back to a wolf, which is, you'll always see 1 or 2. It's those ones behind you that you don't see that are going to kill you. We have a large population here in Pennsylvania of coy wolves, a combination of coyote and gray wolf. And all the pictures that have been shown to us by game wardens and park rangers, you'll see 1 or 2, but then when you look in another direction, there's 8 or 9 standing back here watching you. So if you got 1 lone Bigfoot and you got 1 lone bipedal, what's to say that there's not 4 or 5 or 6 more bipedals in the woods behind him? And would the Bigfoot know that? I'm sure being that type of an animal, they would sense that danger and would just walk away. I mean, the bipedals are bigger than a Bigfoot in size, in height especially. So muscular-wise, the way they're built, the way they're described, when you see like the picture of the movie of Patty, where that lumbering gait. Although it's a big gait, I mean it's a big step. It's a very lumbering type thing where when you look at the descriptions of the bipedals, I mean you're looking at something that's built for speed. This thing's a killer. I mean this could run you down in a matter of seconds. But a black bear can do the same thing. So I would think, just my opinion, I would think that they probably stay away from each other. Or one of which the other.
Butch, that's why when I go out into the wilderness, I always bring someone slower than me. Seriously.
I wear a T-shirt that says on the back, if you see me running, try to keep up.
I'm telling you this, I'm a meal, people. I am a meal. I'm not an appetizer. I'm a meal. And lo and behold, if all of a sudden some pissed off grizzly bear decides to start running at me, Lon, I am out, and I am tripping whoever needs to be tripped in order to survive.
Hey, well, you're taking your chum along with you, so that's cool.
Exactly. Actually, what I have done is I've got my buddy Mark now, like I said, who's an outdoorsman who's going to be coming with me, and we're going to be doing some investigations. Gentlemen, I am going to get you guys to hold on here because we are already through 2 hours of Space Out Radio tonight. Strange Days with Butch Witkowski happens the final Monday of every month. And we're very glad to have Lon Strickler with us tonight as well from phantomsandmonsters.com. Butch's website is uforcop.com. That's UFORCOP.com. I highly suggest you pick out and check out both gentlemen's websites because they are filled with information. I'm going to get a big question in after this. Bigfoot versus Grizzly. Who is winning that brawl for it all? I want to see that on pay-per-view. I think we could make that actually bigger than McGregor and Mayweather on the weekend. Still pissed off about that fight. But nonetheless, it was a good one. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back for the final hour of Strange Days right after this.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with UFO Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you along for the ride. Tomorrow night, we learn about the Ouija board. All the way from Saskatchewan, Ryan Willie is going to join us to tell us his incredible stories with the talking board. Good, bad, evil. We're going to get into it all tomorrow night on the mighty SOR. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us. You can also hear us on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Stibogram. Or is it Stibogram? It's one of the two, Stibogram or Stibogram. But that is your password for tonight, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow me on social media, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can find me on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows. Don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. We're also on iHeartRadio in the United States and TalkStream Live. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, rock out to some Bumblefoot. You can also shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, or watch some great TV from UFO Seekers and Contact TV. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. Tonight, for the final time, we introduce Butch Witkowski on Strange Days. Butch joins us the final Monday of every month, and today we're joined by Lon Strickler from phantomsandmonsters.com. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Good to be with you.
Good to be here.
Now, flip a coin. You're in the bush. And Butch, we'll start with you on this one. You're in the bush and you come across a Sasquatch. And on the other end, we got a grizzly bear coming across. How quickly do you ring that ring bell in order to get that match going?
Real quick. We're talking milliseconds here. You know, one of the things that was brought up just a little while ago, and I read it, I just don't remember where I read it, was a guy who's in a pretty good area for Bigfoot sightings. And one of the things that struck him is also in that area they have a lot of mountain lion. And he's never come across a dead mountain lion, nor a Bigfoot. But he just thinks that's awful strange, because he would think that they would be, of course, enemies. You know, a cat, they'll go after anything and they'll kill you quick. So, you know, they're trying to put together, you know, Bigfoot versus anything. I just don't even recall reading a report like that where a Bigfoot was in a tussle with anything in the woods. Now, you would think a bear would be about their size, so a bear wouldn't be afraid of them, especially if it was a grizzly or a large black. And a mountain lion surely wouldn't be afraid of them. A pack of wolves wouldn't be afraid of it. You know, a pack of wolves will take down a full-grown moose. No problem. So, I don't know. I don't know how that even fits into the investigative mind that I have wrapped up in this little skull of mine.
Oh, come on. What's the Vegas odds here? Who are you putting your money on, Sasquatch or grizzly bear?
All right. I'll grizzly.
The grizzlies here on their hind legs get to 10 to 12 feet tall.
And they also, I would think if a grizzly took a good swipe at a Bigfoot, he'd probably rip his head right off.
What do you think, Lon? Who are you putting your money on? Vegas odds.
The one with the claws and the big teeth. That'd be the grizzly.
I think so too. I think it would be one hell of a good brawl, though. I don't think Bigfoot would get would get, clobbered. I think he would get some good shots in. But I still think the grizzly wins. Probably, gives him a good belly-to-belly suplex and then pins him for the 3 count right in the middle of the forest. I'm a firm believer of that, But I think the grizzly is stronger. It's definitely bigger. I mean, you're looking at a creature, let's say, what's the average Sasquatch that we've heard? 400 or 500 pounds, we estimate. Grizzlies can get up to 1,000 pounds plus.
Mm-hmm.
I think the grizzly wins hands down.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it may be a TKO, but one of them's getting eaten, and it's going to be the Bigfoot.
I agree. I absolutely agree with that. Let's get to another question here. We'll get back a little bit more serious here. And this one comes from Carrie. Carrie's all over the board. She's learning about the cryptids. So she is asking some pretty good questions right now. Carrie is asking, do you believe, and Lon, we'll start with you on this one, that there are species of cryptids out there that we have not identified yet? And if so, how many?
Oh, I'm quite sure there are. I mean, we got the old standbys, but have we really identified what they are? I mean, I'm quite sure there's more out there, and there may be more to come. As far as what number, I have no idea.
So with saying that, Lon, do you think that these 1 or 2 sightings that we hear people reporting, that there should be a little bit more investigation being put into those? Or what do you think is the next one? I mean, for years, for decades, it's been Bigfoot. For the last 20 years, when the Beast of Bray Road story by Linda Godfrey came out, now it's been Dogman. What do you think is the next one? Or then it was Chupacabra, pardon me. What's the next one?
Well, look like what we're dealing with in Chicago. I mean, this may be the next one. There have been flying humanoid sightings, flying anomaly sightings for centuries. I mean, they've gone back as far as Near East, Middle East cultures, but it's something that you don't hear a whole lot about, but you've been hearing a lot about it lately. Is it because of the Chicago sightings? I don't know. It may very well be, but there have been a lot of sightings. There have been lake monsters. Seems like every lake's got a monster to it. Though I don't buy into a lot of that. I don't know. I can't really tell you what the next one would be, but you can rest assured there's going to be something.
How about you, Butch? What do you think the next one is?
I'm going to say another primate.
In North America?
No. Mm-mm. I think it's going to be another primate, and it's going to be in the Amazon somewhere. Because I believe it's still going on. There was a research group that left last year, I think, and they were following tracks of a group of they were sure were large apes. Now, apes in that area are not known at all, other than monkeys. I mean, these aren't chimpanzees or small tree dwellers. These are very large apes, and I haven't really heard anything new on that on that expedition. But I think they're going to come up with a name, and I do believe that they're going to the Tasmanian devil will be back too.
Mm-hmm. What about all these dinosaur sightings that people are saying down the road, or seeing in Africa, or in the bushes? I mean, even here in North America, we still have people claiming that they are seeing pterodactyls. Lon, do you think there is any real, true research into this, that this creature, let's say specifically since we're dealing in North America, the pterodactyl is still around?
Well, there was, I don't know if you're familiar with this, the Van Meter visitor, or what they called that in Van Meter, Iowa, back in the early 1900s. It was this pterodactyl-like being that was that had come into this area several times. There have been people, well, Chad Lewis in particular has researched this fairly extensively. There have been pterosaur sightings worldwide and in the United States. Jonathan Whitcomb has been looking into that for the past 20 years or so. I've also heard of and gotten many reports of either raptor or small T-Rex creatures in southern Texas and as well as in Utah and Colorado. These sightings have been happening. I mean, in Africa, you've had the sightings of this brontosaurus type creature, or
Boygo.
Yeah, and these sightings have been out there, and they've been out there for a long time. There've been expeditions to Africa to find these things. Some of the evidence is pretty compelling, but we still don't have a body. We still don't have a photograph. I guess it's possible. I guess it's just like anything else. I'm not necessarily saying that these are indigenous beings. Are they something from a time slip, from a time traveler of some type? Well, that very well may be. I mean, there's no real evidence of time travel, but there is a lot of evidence that points that way. But scientifically, we can't prove that.
The reason why I ask is, I remember Jonathan Whitcomb being on this show a long time ago, probably time for me to get him back, but he had reported that the pterodactyls, or the ropins, had been seen flying north, and there had actually, up north of me here in British Columbia, during the summer months, that there were First Nations communities actually saying that people would go missing because these ropin were so big they were picking up, First Nations people as food.
There have been indications and some sighting reports that there may actually be a flyway for these pterosaurs anywhere from northern Mexico in through the continental divide of the United States up into Canada. There have been people talking about that for a long time, and in fact, there had been accounts from the Spanish explorers into California and that have mentioned these pterosaur-like beings being encountered. So, I don't really know how true those are, but they state that they have witnessed that people were actually taken off by these creatures. So, there are a lot of stories out there, but every legend kind of starts off with a little bit of truth, I guess.
Butch, have you ever had any ropin/pterodactyl reports with UFO Cop?
No, not at all. The only report that I'm aware of was a report Stan Gordon had out, I believe it was 2 years ago, of a pterodactyl type bird seen. I believe it was in Westmoreland County. Other than that, I haven't had any.
I'd like to check that out a little bit more. I mean, there's just so many different cryptids out there that people are seeing. How do you guys, and Lon, I'll start with you on this one because, well, that's just where I'm going. I have that power. But, Lon, when people are making these reports, as far-fetched as some of these reports may be, How do you learn to take them seriously? How do you know what's real, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, for the most part, when you get a report like that, you can't really tell if it's real. But, you know, you give, in my case, I give the witness the benefit of the doubt. But then I go back and look into other reports from other researchers or reports that I have received in the past. For instance, these small T-Rex type beings that have been reported in hill country in South Texas. You know, I have received, I guess, 3 or 4 of those reports over the years. But, you know, I've talked to Ken Gerhardt as well about these, and, you know, it's an area that he investigates, and he's received reports as well. So, and in fact, he investigates the areas. So, because he lives down there. So, you know, is it truth? Well, it may not be, but, you know, I normally will try to get back with the witness and try to go into more detail, find out exactly where they were, what they saw, circumstances, and try to compare it to other reports. And if I believe there may be something to it, I will report it.
Let's move on here to other North American type cryptids that people are seeing. You know, you guys have, especially you, Butch, have got really into the bipedal canine, and there doesn't seem to be very many reports that you have brought on this show recently of any sightings that have happened over the last couple of months. Are we just in that stagnant period, like you said earlier, that, you know, you could go 7-8 months without a sighting and then you'll get a rash of, say, 4 to 10 different sightings?
Yeah, that's exactly how it's happened. We had in 14, going into 15, we had, it went from 1 to 7 in a matter of a couple months. Then there was a lull almost into the next summer, and then we had 3 in a row, and then there was another lull. You know what I mean? It's not like there. It's a continuous thing. It's like and the areas are like the one or 2 cases I'm thinking of in particular within the loop. One was seen in June, and then not 10 miles, or I'm sorry, about 20 miles away in another area, one was seen in October. And then that was followed by another one in November, late November. And then there wasn't anything until the following June. So it seems like, I don't know what the pause or the cause is for that pause, but, you know, at first I thought, you know, well, we've seen one, we're going to see this is going to be a continuous thing, but it never was. From the very get-go, it was the biggest ones were the first 7. Those just hit like wildfire, and they were spread out over a period of 4.5 months. And then the second group was not quite 6 months later. So there's this intermittent between, and I don't know what causes that or why it would be that way. But now the last one we had was 3 months ago, or no, 2 months ago, and that was the 2 gentlemen on the walk that had something following them in the woods. And then they saw it on the tree line. So now, when do we see the next report? I mean, will it be tomorrow, or a month from now, or 2 months from now?
Lon, how about you? Have you received any reports on the bipedal canine that people are seeing in Pennsylvania recently?
Well, you know, any reports I get or Butch get, we share with each other, so, you know, they're the same reports. This report from July 4th that Butch just mentioned, that was an excellent report about, by the way, and we hadn't had one for a while. It seems that if we go back to 14, 15, it seems like most of the reports start coming in around late summer, early fall. So we're getting into that period now. So, we may actually be getting something. I don't know. But that 4th of July sighting where this thing doubled back on them or got ahead of them and then they encountered again in the parking lot, that was a pretty wild one. And that one in particular, I believe, was something as far as territory, because I think this upright was actually protecting something. That's what it seemed to me, just by the way it was reacting to them. It didn't, it wasn't aggressive, but it was really keeping an eye on them.
Yeah. And the fact that when they get back to their truck, after they realize it's there, I mean, they see it, and they get back to their truck, and it's waiting for them at the tree line. And they never heard it go that far.
I have a couple questions coming from the audience here. Michael is asking if you guys have ever received any reports, especially recently, of a squonk. And what do you think of that cryptid?
The squonk is very dominant in Pennsylvania. It's actually a old wives' tale. It was put out to scare kids, to make sure that they went to school a certain way instead of lollygagging around and marching through the fields and everything else. The squonk was created to cause them to stay on the trail or the road and go to school. That's a very old story. That goes back to the I think the late 1700s.
So you're thinking it's just a legend and there was really not such a creature?
No such thing. It was an old wives' tale. It was told to kids. A legend. It developed into a legend, but it actually was an old wives' tale to make kids go to school so they wouldn't wander off and not get to school. And it's just been around for a very long time. And when you look at a drawing of a squonk, I mean, the way it was drawn, I mean, this thing couldn't even walk, let alone run.
The band Genesis actually put a song out, Squonk, back in 1976. I have looked over the reports over the years of this thing, and it just seems to be a made-up character, made-up cryptid.
Reminds you of the Albatwitch.
Exactly.
The Albatwitch. What the hell is that? Come on. Don't hold out on me.
Actually, this thing kind of lives in Columbia, Pennsylvania, as they say.
Well, around there, yeah.
And it's a monkey-like creature, small, and when you walk past it throws apples at you. That's it.
That's in the Chickies Rock area. Isn't that around that where people have seen this supposedly?
Yeah, Chickies Rock. Yeah.
Yeah.
It hides in the trees. You walk by, it throws apples at you.
Interesting.
People consider it like a small Sasquatch, a small Bigfoot that, this thing throws apples. And I don't know. I don't even know where the story really came from. I don't know if there's some Amish influence in that story. I really don't know.
Not so much Amish as I believe it started with German immigrants that were working on the bridges over the Columbia in Columbia there over the river.
Okay.
Immigrants.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Let's get to another question here. This one comes from Gloria. And Gloria, I hope you're going to be safe too, because I know the tropical storm Harvey is moving into Louisiana here, so make sure you're safe. And to all our listeners like the Champ and Paula who are in Texas right now, please be safe. From all of us here at Spaced Out Radio, we are sending you our love, our prayers, and our thoughts. So, keep it up. Gloria, you be safe as well. And Gloria's asking, have either of you had any reports of a stench or any type of smell from the flying humanoids?
No.
Not that I ever... No.
Mm-mm.
Out of all the cases that have been reported to me over the years, and including what's going on in Chicago, I haven't heard anything about any type of odor, scent, or any type of smell coming from these things.
Yet with Bigfoot, we seem to see odor. Do we have any odor around, say, Dogman, or even the bipedal canines?
No.
So they shower more. They're jumping in the lakes more. Bigfoot just doesn't care.
Better hygiene.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe people just haven't gotten close enough to smell anything. Or haven't been downwind.
Yeah, you would think they'd smell like wet dog.
Yeah, you'd think so. But no, at all the reports we've gotten, I can't recall that. I've gotten Dogman and upright canine reports over the years, and I really can't recall anything like that.
Lon, what is your opinion on the biggest difference between the Dogman and the bipedal canine?
Well, the Dogman is normally a quadruped. It doesn't go up on two legs. The upright canines that we are getting in the Loop area, like in Loop area in PA, as well as the upright canines that are reported up in Wisconsin and southern Ontario, those are bipedals. People don't see them on four legs. There is also, the Dogman quadrupeds have that human-looking humanoid aspect to them, body-wise, but they still have the Dogman head, the canine head and tail and such, but the body sizes are a little bit different. The body style is a bit different, and they don't have paws like a normal canine would. But for the most part, they're quadrupeds.
Have we ever had an encounter where the two have run into each other, Butch?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Not that I've seen or found researching.
Do we think they could be related?
I don't think so. The Dogman reports that I've read, they're smaller, they're more dog-like, they have a dog head, they're always on all fours, bushy tails. They have different types of coats, like some have long fluffy coat, some are multicolored, resembling a dog. Most researchers that I've talked to about it think that they're feral dogs, although some are large, but some are smaller, where the description of the bipedal is always the same, the size, the shape, the head, the muscular chest, the thin waist, the heavy legs, the hock legs, the large arms and hands with claws. You don't have that in the Dogman end of it. Although when you see pictures of Dogman, it more resembles a werewolf looking type of creature. And but those are drawings. When we put out our first drawing of the bipedal, I took the reports that I had, the first 7 reports, and what I did was all I took was the descriptions, nothing else. There was no description of where it was, what it looked like, anything, other than what the witness told me. And I took those descriptions and sent them to a forensic artist, and they sent back what we show on the website. And if you look at that photo or that drawing as opposed to the drawings of Dogman. And another thing that's most important, that I think is most important, that differentiates the two, the Dogman, when encountered, always seems to run away, takes off. It's not aggressive. The bipedal shows no fear. It stays its ground. And that to me is the biggest difference. The dogman can be scared away by yelling, firing a shot, and do whatever you're going to do. But the bipedal doesn't run, and it's been encountered with guys with guns, and it still doesn't move. It just stays there. And everybody that encountered, and I don't see this or I haven't read it either with the dogman reports. I don't know, maybe Lon did, but I haven't. Where when encountered with folks that have guns, high-powered rifles, these gentlemen that have these weapons get this mental block that they're not to shoot. Don't fire, don't pull the trigger, don't do this, don't do that. And I mean, they have this thing in their sights. And I've not seen or heard that with anything dogman related. And I think there's a difference between the two, a big difference.
I also want to put in there that, a lot of times people get these two confused. If you go on the internet, or you go into Amazon or anywhere and see these books about Dogman, they've got Dogman on the title, but then they've got this upright canine in a picture. Well, they're not the same thing. I mean, I don't know how these names got interchanged with each other, but they're not the same thing. A perfect example of a Dogman would be, say you go to Phantoms and Monsters and just search like Lakewood lichen. There was a sighting that was reported to me in the Denver suburbs a couple of years ago. Now that was a dogman. That was a quadruped. It was big, but these are different than the upright canines. So there is a distinction, just not to be confused with something else.
Let's move on here. Lon, on your website, phantomsandmonsters.com, just today you posted an article about black-eyed children. And we've actually been talking about this topic. We had David Weatherly on last week talking about BEKs as well. What do you think they are?
I believe, for the most part, that these are some type of, and I hate to say the word hybrid, but that there's some kind of crossbreeding of humans and some other species. And when I say other species, non-terrestrial species, alien or whatever. But I believe there's, I believe that's what it may be. It's interesting. When these sightings first started to become prominent, when David wrote the book and started putting these sighting reports out there, it was always BEKs. It was always kids. Well, the kids are growing up because we're getting a lot more adults now too. So, is this something that where these black-eyed people grow up, or is we're just seeing other beings now that look like adults? I don't know. I mean, but I do believe that there's a cross there somehow. How it happened, I don't know. I really don't. But they've got too many human aspects to not be. I heard an interesting theory not long ago about these BEKs or black-eyed people may be some type of government bioengineered experiment. Well, that very well may be. Maybe it's something that has been released to the population. I don't believe it's the first time that's happened. I mean, I think that's happened before. I think maybe some of the cryptids that we encounter may actually be bioengineered creatures or beings of some type that were released on purpose or accidentally. I don't know what they are. David and I have talked about this before, and I don't really think either one of us can come up with a consensus of what these things actually are.
Do they seem to be, Lon, strictly around certain areas, or is these sightings happening absolutely everywhere? Like, you might get one in Wisconsin, and next week you get a report out of Texas.
Well, it seems that they're in North America for the most part. I don't know. Well, there have been some sightings in England I have received, but overall, I think most of the sightings are in the United States and in Canada. But no, they've been all over the place.
Butch, have you had to deal with many BEK sightings with UFO Cop?
None. And I don't want any. That just creeps me out.
Finally, we got something that scares you.
Yes, that scares me. I'm going to go along with Joe on your page here, where he says he doesn't even answer the door for humans.
You know, I'm still, speaking of pay-per-view, I would like to see this pay-per-view happen. Because I don't know what I would do if I saw a black-eyed kid. I would like to see a black-eyed child go against my former mother-in-law in the octagon. I'd like to see that happen. I'm not sure who wins that one. Because they're both evil, man. They're both evil. I'm sure they'll both fire some sort of superpowers at each other. Scare the living daylights out of me. But on a serious note, Lon, have you heard anybody who has got physical with these black-eyed children?
Yeah, there was a report out of Atlantic City that I received not long ago. I'd have to look it up and get the full details, but I do know this gentleman had encountered these pair of black-eyed kids, and I think they were like teenager age or whatever, but they were aggressive, fairly aggressive. In fact, he did notice that they moved, but they didn't actually walk. They kind of glided, and that they did chase him around a bit, and but as far as actually being physical, I don't know. I really can't really think. I can't really think of any actually causing any physical damage. Though psychologically, I mean, it can freak some of these people out. I mean,
Wasn't there
a case there?
Didn't JC have a case when they were in the car and there was a female?
Yeah, that was bizarre. Him and Jack Carey were investigating some UFO sightings, some humanoid sightings in New Mexico, and they were in the car with these two other gentlemen from the reservation, and JC and Jack were in the back. And as they were driving, they were looking out beyond the road, out in the desert, and they saw this woman walking towards the road. So they stopped the car to see if they could, she needed any help or anything. Well, when she walked up to them, she was, the first thing they noticed were her eyes were completely black. She was a young woman. Her clothes were all tattered. They asked her if they could help her, and what happened was she looked at JC and Jack in the back, and they both became violently ill. I mean, it was bad. They freaked out, and they took off. They must have gone down. Now, what JC told me, they must have gone down the road 7 or 8 miles. They came to a gas station and stopped the car. And because Jack and JC had to get out and compose themselves. And as they were standing there, they looked back up the road and they saw this woman walking down the road towards them. I don't know what it was they ran into. That it could have been a phantom of some type, but you know, they the biggest description, the most important description was it that she had the black eyes.
I don't know if I would want to come across something like that. See, that's why I just don't pick up hitchhikers. Is you just don't know. I'd be with my luck, I would be the guy who finds the black-eyed kid murderer. You know, that's much probably what would happen with me. So I'm not going there. I'm not going there at all. Now, one of our listeners, Carrie, asked, "Do you believe that maybe the black-eyed children are just lost souls?"
You talking about spiritual wise?
Yeah.
Incarnate? Yeah, it could be. It seems like they are. They do look like some type of flesh and blood manifestation of some type. They're weird for the fact that they just stare at you. They kind of like a monotone when they talk. They're kind of pale in color. Of course, they got the black eyes, but they seem to move quickly from spot to spot, which is bizarre. I mean, yeah, I mean, you could probably think that there's some type of phantom, and I can understand how people would think that. But then again, there have been so many different types of descriptions of these things that tend to believe that they just aren't, a manifestation or a spiritual being or a specter. I don't know. I mean, could there be different types? Yeah, sure. But these BEKs that are reported to come to your door, knock on the door, or ring the doorbell and ask to come in and use the telephone or the bathroom, they seem to be some type of actual flesh and blood beings. But I believe there may be instances where it was a specter.
Do you either believe that there is some sort of alien life to these, or do you think that this is just purely demonic?
I don't believe it's demonic. I believe it's a better chance of it being non-terrestrial. Yeah, non-terrestrial or alien.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We talked about interdimensional. I mean, this may be a perfect example of what that is. I mean, these may be other beings that come from an alternate reality. I believe that works both ways, though, too. I believe that there's a possibility that some humans that go missing actually go in through a portal of some type into another reality as well. Yeah, I think that's very possible.
And Butch, you believe that as well?
Yes, I do.
Why is that?
It just seems natural to me that could be that way. That they could be from an alternate dimension or alternate reality, however you want to put it. And just the fact that they want into the house or your car. And almost all the reports have that, where they're asking for help, or they want to use the phone, or they want to just come in, or they want to get out of the cold. There's always something to get into the house, and people getting sick or feeling queasy when they're looking at them. I mean, there's something. I think there's a whole lot to that.
Interesting indeed. How about Thunderbird sightings, guys? Have we heard any Thunderbird reports recently?
I haven't gotten any recently. There have been reports over the years in Pennsylvania of these huge black birds. And of course, and in fact, I brought this up to Butch and other people that have been investigating this thing in Chicago. That area in general, southern Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana, are well known for Thunderbird sightings and strange, huge black birds. But recently, no, we haven't. I haven't gotten anything. I don't know if Butch has.
No, I haven't. No.
Mm-hmm.
And I only recall a couple of reports like that out of western Pennsylvania.
Do we believe that there actually is this giant-looking crow that we call the Thunderbird flying around? Because that would take one hell of a big nest or cave in order to have a bird with a wingspan of 30 to 40 feet.
Well, a bird that size would never have a cave because it would never get off the ground. A bird that size would have to live on top of a mountain or a cliff or high up. It wouldn't be able to lift itself off the ground. I mean, the wings wouldn't be enough. I don't care how wide they are. I mean, you'd need the lift. The aerodynamics wouldn't be there. So it would be a whole lot easier for a creature like that to just nosedive off a cliff and pick up the wind and go.
What do you think?
I suggest people who are interested in reading about it get the book Big Bird, which was written by Ken Gerhardt and Nick Redfern several years ago. They described a lot of the sightings in Texas, in and around the San Antonio area. I have received reports from that area as well. There has been some very, very interesting, huge blackbird sightings in that area, and as far south as into Mexico. Ken has looked into that for many years now. Yeah, I mean, you look into the Native American legends as far as the Thunderbird. I don't believe there's any tribe or nation, native nation, that doesn't have a Thunderbird-like legend to it. There's got to be something to it.
I'm just curious because that seems to be one that just kind of comes in and out every now and again. And if so, I mean, a bird of that size or of that magnitude would take a lot of food to eat. You know what I'm saying? Like this thing would be picking up deer or moose like there's nothing out there. In the existence of this creature, do you believe this is probably one that is maybe a little bit far-fetched from someone's imagination, or do you believe that they're actually out there, Lon?
Well, it may be a misidentification. There are some big birds out there. I mean, the condors and such. But some of the locations where they are seen at, like, again, I mentioned in Illinois, I mean, it seems like some of the hugest blackbird sightings have been out in Illinois for whatever reason. But, it's been seen everywhere. I mean, other places, too. In fact, in Pennsylvania, there was a sighting in an area called Factoryville, Pennsylvania, about 5 or 6 years ago that Stan Gordon reported on. This thing was huge. And, it was seen at a distance. But it was just gigantic. I had a report down in Virginia, Southern Virginia, a couple of years back, of this bird that this gentleman on highway encountered, and the wings actually it stood in the middle of the road, and the wings went beyond the edges of the road. He estimated up to a 20-foot wingspan. I used to get reports like that a lot. I mean, and you're right. It does seem that it comes in waves. Why that? I mean, a lot of cryptid sightings, a lot of cryptid reports, it does happen where you get these waves of sightings.
Butch, do you think this one is fact or fallacy?
Well, we have a raptor sanctuary not far from where I live, and I went up there one time. It was a feather that we received that we wanted to get ID'd. It was a very large feather, and it was a condor. And I said to the guy, I said, so how did a condor get into Pennsylvania? He said, condors have been seen in New York, New Jersey, Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, all over the place. Well, how are they getting there? He said, well, they'll get up into a thermal and they'll get stuck in that thermal, and they'll ride that thermal across the country. I said, you're kidding. He said, It's very common. So is it misidentification? I mean, how many people in New York City who are so used to having pigeons shitting on their head seen a condor? I mean, a guy in Brooklyn looking up and normally seeing pigeons, and all of a sudden he sees a condor with that huge wingspan, that huge body fly across from building to building. He'd damn near have a heart attack. So I think, cranes, I mean, there are a lot of big birds out there. And I just think that a lot of it's misidentification.
Gentlemen, we only got about 2.5 minutes left with you guys. And
how'd that happen?
I don't know. The time just flies by. It really just flies by whenever we get you on, Butch and Lon. I want to say thank you for hopping on. I hope it's quicker than 3 months before we get to have you back on with Butch again.
No problem.
Appreciate that. Butch, why don't you tell everybody what you've been working on and where your investigations are going for the remainder of the summer?
Well, we're getting into our season now where we'll be heading up into the woods. Within the next 2 weeks, we'll be gone. So hit our research areas and set our camera traps and get all that stuff done. And then there's a couple new places we want to check out in our Lichen Loop area. So we're going to be busy. So I'll pretty much notify everybody on Facebook when we're out of here, so nobody's trying to get a hold of me because I'm not going to be able to answer. But that's where we're at right now. We're pretty much into the bipedal thing and looking for evidence. And of course, we got the farm that we're watching and a couple other things going on, but pretty much sticking with what we got going. And of course, keeping track of the Todd Cease case. So just the way it is.
And how about you, Lon? What are you working on these days?
Well, I'm spending my sleepless days gathering phone calls from witnesses in the Chicago area, and I don't see any end of that coming anytime soon. Of course, I'll be monitoring what Butch is going to be investigating when he gets on the road, and we'll be conferring back and forth of what's going on there. But yeah, I mean, I'm still looking into everything. Any type of reports we get to come in. Working on another book as well that's going to deal with the Chicago sightings. So, but that seems to be my main focus right now. What's going on out there?
Once again, your websites: Butch Witkowski, UFOcop.com. We have Lon Strickler from phantomsandmonsters.com. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. What a pleasure. And sometimes I just can't believe how fast these shows go. Like 3 hours just zipped on by.
Yeah, it does happen like that. Yeah.
It does. It does, for sure. You guys hold on. I got to wrap this thing up here because it's that time of the night where I have to say good night to everyone, because if you're listening in the background, you got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking us away with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, and he's planning a December 29th concert in Vancouver. So that would mean I'm taking the 29th and 30th off. Vancouver on the 29th, Seattle on the 30th. A weekend with Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal before New Year's. That's a good way to end the year around here. I want to do you a favor, my audience. I want to tell you about tomorrow night's show. We get into Ouijas, talking boards. Ryan Willey comes on here to talk about his incredible story with a lifelong usage of the Ouija board. And how it affected his life. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. I want to say thanks to my team, Everett Thiemer, Eric Markham from The Encounter Online, Jolene Lammers, Tim Doyle, our web developers, Catherine James, social media, our great studio announcer, Bob Davis, just became a grandpa last week, and Director of Business Management, Kim Gandy, along with LMC Media out of Toronto, who supports us, Leslie Mitchell-Clark, thank you so much. But most of all, the big news is from all of you, our listeners on Spreaker, Facebook, the chat rooms that we go to from the radio stations that follow us, Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Without all of you, this just is no fun. This is no fun. You make it all worth it, because together, my friends, we own the night. We'll talk to you in 21 hours from now. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow. Mr. Bumblefoot, take us home.